Hi everyone, today I want to show you how you can use Zsh Line Editor to do some cool stuff with command line. So let's start. First of all, if you haven't used Zsh, I have a video introducing you to Zsh. You should see it somewhere above now and in my videos. So what is ZLE? It stands for Zsh Line Editor, and this is an core editing engine in Zsh itself. It enables us to do things like manipulate command itself, text in the command, buffer, history, and so on. Another thing we're gonna talk about are custom widgets. Those are essentially functions that extend Zsh functionality, and we are going to build one of those ourselves. We can also use pattern expansion, which Zsh, differently to Bash, has much more powerful pattern expansion, braces expansion, and so on. Again, all those basic concepts are in the video that I mentioned earlier. So the whole idea here is to be able to manipulate the current buffer. What does it mean? Imagine that you have a command, something simple like ls tag lha, and this is your buffer. So this inside of ZLE is captured inside of a buffer variable. So here on the right hand side. Now there are other variables that are useful to us. There's many more than what I'm showing you, but those are enough for what I want to show you with using ZLE to automate command. So first we have left hand side of a buffer. So if you imagine that the cursor is where the space is right now between ls and the arguments, then the L buffer will equal ls. Cursor position will be where our cursor is. This is a number, and the right buffer will be from our cursor position towards the right, so space tag LAH. So knowing this, we can create widgets and functionality that manipulates our current buffer. Now, why would we want to do it? So taking advantage of the widget system means that you can have a customizable functions that enhance the Zsh command line editing. In order to list all the widgets, you can execute ZLE tag LA and you will see all the widgets. Let's give it a try. ZLE tag LA, and you can see there's a lot of various widgets, some of them for Vim, some of them others. That's the easy way to see them. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can define your own widgets. At the bottom, you can see an actual function from my ZLRC file where I define a function and I'm creating a widget right here at the bottom that essentially has the same name as a function. And then I'm binding this widget to a shortcut, in this case, Ctrl-Alt-O. So you can see how widgets can be created. So we have so far learned about the current line and various variables that Zsh uses to capture what you type, and then widgets that are essentially invocable functions that you can bind to a shortcut. So this is one way of doing it. Let's look in depth how the widget flow looks like. So having the widget defined earlier, that you've seen a moment ago, let's come back to this real quick. So the widget, it's called openFileGetStaged, and it invokes this function right here. And it's bind to this key. So whenever the system detects the trigger key, in this case it would be Ctrl-Alt-O, then the widget is being triggered. And the widget has an expansion function. It checks for whether the pattern is matched. In the case that I showed you earlier, it's just a simple call to a function, but we're gonna see how we can manipulate the actual buffer. So if you imagine having a typed something, then the widget has access to this, and then you can manipulate it inline before pressing enter. So when the pattern that we are looking for is found, then we can apply any function. In our case, what we are going to do, we are going to apply pattern that I called abbreviations. It's not an official ZShell term. It's simply an abbreviation that expands to something else. So let's see this in action so you have better understanding how it works. Here you can see on the left-hand side, I have a numbers file that is unsorted, and it's called numbers.txt. So if I want to sort it, I can do sort n numbers, and then as expected, you would see the numbers sorted. All right, if I want to sort file in place, well, I have to do a little bit of typing because we cannot actually use sort to sort the same file. So we would have to redirect the output to a different file and then pull it back to our original file or move them, rename them by moving them. To make this thing a little bit easier, there is a command that belongs to core utils package. I've made a video about it, so you can watch it. It should be somewhere above right now. And Sponge is quite neat utility that enables you to manipulate files in place. So I can use Sponge in order to change the file in place. So let's do this. So if I do this, you can see from history Sponge, and when I hit enter, this file has just changed. There was an empty line at the bottom, so it reverted the whole order. Okay, so where is the ZShell here? So now, if I want to, you can see that I had to type again pipe, Sponge, and again the name of my file that I'm sorting in this case. But wouldn't it be nice if I can have abbreviation that would essentially expand, including my file? So that's where our system comes into play. So I can type underscore, that's how I start my abbreviations, and then SPO, and when I hit space, you can see that we essentially expanded to the same command as you've seen earlier, and it would behave in the same way. Okay, so that's useful. It saves maybe 10 seconds of typing, but you can of course see that in this way you can do different things. I have a few other abbreviations that I can show you. Let's imagine that I want to copy this numbers file and make a backup of it. So I can start doing CP, then numbers, but now I have to come up with the backup name. Again, it's not that difficult, but I can do another abbreviation, BAK, and when I hit space, you can see that the CP command transforms and it takes the same file and then it uses ZShell expansion to add a backup suffix. So you can imagine how this can function when you typed something in the command line, and instead of editing the command line, going into Vim edit mode, or just going back and changing parameters, you can essentially have those suffixes or abbreviations, as I call them, and do this much easier. So since we've seen how this works, let's see how is it put together. So the whole script is very simple. The first part is essentially a dictionary that's called in ZShell and Bash associative array. And you can probably imagine what's happening here. We have abbreviation, which we used, SPO, BAK, and I have a few others. And we have a corresponding function. So this simply matches the abbreviation to a function. We are creating a dictionary of our abbreviations, so in future this is easily expandable and we can keep adding new abbreviations and corresponding functions. So let's look at the Sponge expand abbreviation. First, we define internal local variable that captures the left buffer. So this is the left-hand side of what we are typing. And if you remember, switching back quickly to our example here, if I do CP and then I type a file, so in this case numbers, my cursor is right here at the end of the command, so after a space. So everything from my cursor towards the left is actually the L buffer. In this case, we could also use the whole buffer, because that's everything, but we're essentially capturing it into a variable. Now, since files cannot have spaces, we can safely split everything into words. So we take the whole left buffer, and in our case, those are two words, cp and the name of the file. And the last part is the variable that uses, again, a powerful Zsh Line expansion system that captures all the words and then gets only the last word. So -1 is an array. We are indexing an array and we are capturing the last word. Those are Zsh Line specific. You can learn about them and they are really powerful. And the last one is essentially outputting to the screen the whole left buffer and then appending sponge with the last word, which, as you've seen earlier, results in our abbreviation. All right. So how is it put together? So since we have this function that essentially expands to whatever we type, so copy, file name, and then it adds pipe operator and then sponge with the same file name. So this is the engine, a very small, lightweight engine of the whole solution. We have a function called expand abbreviation, and this function essentially stores the pattern we try to match, and it, when executed, it says, oh, is the local buffer matching the name of the pattern? So in other words, when we are typing this, so _SPOE, this function will take everything on the left-hand side. So SPOE is our name of the function. And using this rather complex looking regex would trim everything except of the last argument. And thus the buffer will equal our match. So then it says, if we found this in our abbreviation associative array, which is our dictionary, then we are simply executing it. So we are calling abbreviation and our match. So that's a very simple abstraction over how we can create more and more abbreviations. So we don't need to change this engine. This engine will always accommodate new abstractions. Finally, at the beginning, I said you can create your own widget. That's exactly what we are doing here. With -N, we are creating our own widget, which is called expand abbrev. One more time, this is this function. And now we are binding space to triggering it. So as you've seen me doing here, when I hit space, suddenly everything changes and the new command replaces the _SPOE abbreviation. We could add here a tab or a combination of keys, but I thought for me space works well. The last element is a bit special. It's if you would go into history and would like to find the command inside the history, which the iSearch is for, and hit space there, then we would essentially bind to this widget, which we don't want. So the last line of this code takes care of exactly this. So let's look real quick at the patterns themselves. So the %%, and then #m. This removes the longest match of a pattern from the end of a string. And M enables group matching. So it is a ZShell regex engine. ZShell uses Perl regex engine, and then it enables here us to capture the group. The second one that we've seen is a character class. So we are capturing underscore and characters from A to Z and so on. And the last one is our dictionary call. So we've seen how this can be useful. I am using this way of creating abbreviations for a while, and it really helps me with my flow. I'm going to show you the whole script. So you can see here, parts of this we've seen. This is, for example, a different one. So here we have into a new directory, which essentially creates a directory before executing a command, and it follows a very similar pattern here. All of those are ZShell expansion patterns, and they are really nice to know. This is, as always, available in my dot files if you want to take it and play around with it. So what are the best practices of doing it? First of all, it's important to keep patterns memorable, especially if you have a lot of them. You can also add auto-completion. So if you hit tab or some other key, they can auto-complete. That's possible. I didn't have a need for it yet. Consistent naming is important. So in my case, it starts from underscore, so I'll remember that those are abbreviations. And document them with comments or however you want. It's important to test edge cases because sometimes those abbreviations are meant to work with different commands. That's the whole power of those. So in case of creating a directory before a command, it has to work with tar, it has to work with copy, with move, and so on and so forth. So there are some test cases, edge cases you need to work. And always consider in what context you're using those. Let's look at some resources. So the first resource that is important is the man page of ZSH ZLE itself. If you want to learn about Sponge, again, you can watch my video about Sponge, or also have man core utils, and then another ZSH man pages. So how can we access those easily? Here I have a very simple alias that I use instead of man. So it's a very simple function. As you can see here, it just uses FZF and it searches man pages with whatever I put it there, and then it uses NeoVim instead of regular pager to display the output. So let's try. If I type man, instead of usual output, I am seeing now all the FZF, and I can say ZSH, ZLE, and that's the man page. When I hit enter, it shows me everything in NeoVim, which is much nicer to search and widgets, for example. You know, I can go and read about it. So this is just an easier way of doing it. The same could be with core utils or more utils. So for example, a parallel command from more utils. So that's just a way how you could use the man page. Again, this function is in my .files as everything. I encourage you to read especially about the widgets and how ZLE works. It offers a lot of power if you're a ZShell user and I feel it's underutilized in typical workflows. So that's it for today. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for watching, and see you in next video.